to Wager Talks Last Call. I'm Meghan Payton. Excited day here on Thursday. It feels like Christmas morning. We have the NFL Draft, NBA Playoffs, NHL Playoffs, MLB on the card, all breaking it down here at Last Call. If you're new to the show, it's simple. It's all about you. So get into the YouTube live chat. The questions are up to you. You ask our panel whatever you want. They'll give you some last minute best bets, some action that you can get into for tonight and even some for later on in the evening. So we're going to start with a few people here. We've got Carmine Bianco breaking down NHL. We're going to have Eric Pauly, a new guest of the show, talking NFL draft. Tony Finn will be joining us to talk MLB and the NFL draft. But we've got times ticking, so we got to get into the NHL first. Carmine Bianco, welcome to Last Call. We appreciate you joining us here today. You've been fantastic in the NHL, 71.1% this postseason and plus 133.75 units in the full season. And I hear you got a promo going on, a 60-day all sports promo. Tell us a bit about that and where we can find it at Wager Talk.
Yeah, it's been a great start to the playoffs. We're not even through the first round, and we're up 41 units, 41 and a half units. So I'm pretty happy about it. It's been a very good NHL season for us. Soccer's in full gear. The last month of the European season, as well as a lot of tournaments that are still going on. 2-0 day in soccer today, so it was that went well as well too. And then MLB, a couple MLB plays. Getting more into MLB now that the soccer seasons are winding down, but the All Access is on my page. It is literally 60 days of All Access plays, everything I release for only $3.99. It is the 30-day All Access $2.99, so it's basically $100 more for an extra month. So you're saving almost $200, $198. And it's on my page over at Wager Talk. No coupon needed. Just click and go, and hopefully we can make you some money at the same time.
Carm, you're going to break down an NHL game here in a sec, but I want to remind our audience, any hockey questions, MLB, Carm's here to answer it, soccer, whatever you want, Carm will break it down, but we have just an hour before puck drop on the game that Carm's going to be talking. We're looking at the Tampa Bay Lightning at Toronto Maple Leafs, puck drop at 7:10 Eastern. Toronto minus one and a half on the puck line, minus 152 on the money line, and the total's at 6.5. This is game 5. It's an elimination game, and the Tampa Bay Lightning need to step up, and they have to win if they want to stay alive in this series. Tampa Bay won the first game between the two and has lost the last 3. I'm looking at Tampa here, Carmen. I'm saying they have to change their defense. Offensively, we've seen great performance, averaging or had 16 goals in the last 4 games, but they're giving away 19 goals over the 4 games. Vasilevsky has to do better at stopping the goals from happening, and they're going to have to change if they want to keep this series alive. What are you looking at in this one out in Toronto?
Yeah, it is, as you said, it is a closeout game. We've already seen a couple closeout games fail. The Bruins and Carolina both up 3. We're both up 3-1, returning home and number 1 seeds in their divisions, and both lost game 5 at home. So those series are going to go 6. And now we've got a couple tonight, Toronto and the Vegas Golden Knights as well too, in closeout spots. This series, I said from the start there was a lot of overreaction to the first game, that Toronto lost 7-3 at home to Tampa Bay, and they were probably a better play in game 2. I think they tried to be a little too physical in game 1 and try and set a tone, and Tampa Bay took advantage of it. Leafs went back to using their skill in game 2, and the same thing in 3 and 4. This is why they're up 3-1. They just need to keep that ship sort of moving forward. But if you look a little closer at the series, in game 2, they lost a couple of their defensemen, one a result of a suspension to Michael Bunting, who scratched, served a 3-game suspension, was scratched, and Toronto got that one. And then one of the 2 games in Tampa Bay, Tampa had it under control, 4-1, and going into the third period, the Leafs stormed back in that one, score one very late in the last minute of play, and then a great defensive play kept a puck off the line in OT from going in, or else the series is really essentially could be 2-2 right now. Leafs are getting puck luck, and that is a good thing at times. I talk about it. Brian Leonard, we talk about it all season long about the bounces going your way. And this Leafs team in years past haven't gotten the bounces going their way. They have in this series. But this is only, I think, the second time in the last 4 years that Tampa Bay has been in a situation where they could get eliminated. The last one being, I think, last year against the Colorado Avalanche. I expect them to show up. I expect them to be better defensively in this one. And the line has bounced around. I opened at 150 for Toronto. It was up to about 165 this morning on the Wager Talk Live lines. And then some money started to come back in on Tampa, dropped it down to about a dollar 50. Couple books had it at 145 ish as some Tampa money continued to come in, and probably rightfully so. I think this Tampa team likely isn't going to roll over and play dead in this spot. And they are obviously a live dog. You're not going to get a team that made it to the Stanley Cup twice. Won the cup twice and then lost in the finals last year. They're just not going to roll over. This is a team with a lot of pedigree. But they're not the same team as they were the last couple of years. But they're playing well enough that they could go into Toronto and get the win tonight. This is a series I thought would go at least 6 games, maybe 7. So I'm of the mindset that Tampa Bay likely can get the win tonight, and then I would probably roll with Toronto in Game 6 in Tampa Bay. The Leafs have proven they can win on the road. They're a better team. The Toronto Maple Leafs are. They're a better team than the Maple Leaf versions of the last 3 or 4 years. Their third and fourth lines are so much better. And I expect them to show up tonight as well, too. I think this is going to be a bit of a barn burner tonight. We're going to see some goals. So I'm going to lean to the dog here. I'm not going to make a lot of Toronto fans happy by doing that, but I'm going to take the plus 130 on Tampa Bay and then lean to seeing some goals in this one as well.
Yeah, if there's one team that can avoid elimination, it's going to be the Tampa Bay Lightning. Granted, they don't look like they have in the past, but Lightning, as you mentioned, made it to the finals last year, won the Stanley Cup the year before, a great coach, and have the ability to come up on top tonight. Let's talk a little bit about the other games going on tonight. We're going to look at one question coming in from Ghosted. Ghosted says, Carm, Vegas Golden Knights Jets tonight, 5.5. I'm feeling over. What do you think? Also think Vegas closes it out.
Yeah, I feel the same way, Ghost. I think they close it out tonight. Like I said, some of these teams have had problems closing it out, and Winnipeg stole that first game 5-1. The final score is no indication of how that game played. There was an empty net goal, a power play goal right at the end of the game, and sort of inflated that score line. But this Vegas Golden Knights team has just gotten better with each and every game in the series, including the 2 games that were in Winnipeg. And now they have a great chance to close it out here. And I think they want to close it out. And you've got some Winnipeg players missing. This Winnipeg team plays better when they need everyone there. They need their whole unit. They're missing Morrissey. They're missing Scheifele. Nicholas Ehlers, I believe, is going to miss the game as well, too. They're important pieces of a team. And usually it's the next man up mentality, but it's tough to miss 3 good pieces of the puzzle for your team and expect them to go into Vegas and beat this Knights team. I have to believe of the 4 closeout games we've had, 2 already, and the 2 tonight, that the Vegas Golden Knights, if you had asked me this before those other 2 were played, I would have said to you the Vegas Golden Knights are probably the best of the 4 in closing out their series, and I think they get it done tonight.
How about the last one on the slate tonight? We have the Rangers, the Devils in Jersey. Devils minus 113, total at 5.5. Any leans in this game?
I'm leaning Rangers here. This has been a series that neither team could win at home. The Rangers went into New Jersey. They won on the Rock, back-to-back games, winning them 5-1. Then they go home. The Devils make a goaltending change and go to Akira Schmidt, and he's been very good since coming in. The Devils have done a very good job in games 3 and 4 of getting the Rangers to play their style of hockey as opposed to the Rangers style of hockey, and it's translated into 2 very low scoring wins for the Devils. And now we're right back to square one. It's a 3-game series with the Devils holding home ice advantage in this 3-game series essentially. But this is one again that I thought would go 7 games. Of all the series, I thought this was the most closely matched series that could go 7 games, and I still feel that way. I actually think the Rangers will likely win this one on the road and then come home, and the Devils will send it back to New Jersey for Game 7. I took the even money this morning on the Rangers. I see they're getting a little bit of money. They still have the number one goalie in the league in Igor Shesterkin, and I think they find a way to play a grittier game tonight and eke out a win and send it to Game 6 at home.
And Carm, before we let you go, I want to hop over to Friday. Lots of games on the action for Friday. Colorado's a game that I'm eyeing. I want to know how you feel about the Dallas Stars. Tons of action, but where should we be somewhat thinking as we prepare to bet on Friday's games?
So here's an interesting thing, and I was talking about it just before the show. The Seattle Kraken are giving the Colorado Avalanche everything they can handle right now. The defending Cup champions are down 3-2, and going to Seattle for Game 6. But it's not a bad idea to actually take to take the Colorado Avalanche yeah, not in the game, but you can take the series price on Colorado and get them at plus 145. My thought process behind this is simple: is game 5, they were without Cale Makar, who served a 1 game suspension. They get him back into the lineup. They need every offensive player they can get, especially with Gabriel Landeskog having missed the whole season and the playoffs. You need every tool you can, and he was greatly missed in game 5. You could tell they needed him there. If they can go into Seattle and get a win there and send this back home, they're going to be about minus 200 to minus 220 on the opener for Game 7, and you'll be able to lock in if you want. You can lock in a profit by taking the Seattle Kraken, who will probably be about plus 170, plus 180 in Game 7 on the money line. So I think Colorado finds a way to get it done. They get their tools back. They are the defending Cup champions, and this will be the first time the Seattle Kraken are in a position where, obviously, closing out a series, uh, the nerves might hit them for this game. So I'm leaning towards Colorado to win that game, head back home, and then we'll see what happens in Game 7. But I would suggest taking the series price at plus 145. This is a team that was north of, I think, minus 300 before this series started to win this series. So getting them at plus 145, even down 3 games to 2, it still has a very good shot.
Carmine Bianco, NHL betting expert here at wagertalk.com, giving out lean suggestions, plays, and he's got an eye on Tampa Bay as the dog against Toronto tonight. You can find Carmine at wagertalk.com. He has a 60-day all sports pass for $3.99. It was originally $5.98, so that is a good deal if you're wanting to get some action on Carms. He's 71.1% in the NHL in the postseason, plus 133.75 units for the entire season. We always appreciate having you on here at Last Call, Carm. Thank you very much for joining us. Go cash some tickets tonight.
All right. Thanks for having me.
Now we switch over to something that gets me very excited, and that's the NFL draft. And we have a great new guest joining us to break down his thoughts on the NFL draft. I want to remind everyone right now there is still plenty of time to get in on the action for the NFL. We have breaking news also in the NFL. Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens officially come to a deal. Lamar Jackson's going to be in Baltimore for the next 5 years. Deal is worth up to $260 million, with $185 million reportedly guaranteed. Eric Pauly, a new member of Last Call, joining us today. We are very excited to have you, Eric. First time here on Last Call. You're the director analytical content for Goldsheet. Tell us a little bit about what you do and where our audience can find you.
Yeah, I really appreciate you having me on, Megan, especially on a day like today, the NFL draft. Know that that's something that you probably hold very near and dear to your heart. So I'm very happy that I'm able to share that with you. Like you just mentioned, I'm currently the director of analytical content at the Goldsheet. Yes, that old Goldsheet that some of the older generation knows. Back in Las Vegas on the West Coast, you would find a sports betting pamphlet with all the information about the games on the card for that day. Well, now we're working to modernize that. So every single day right now, of course, in the midst of baseball season and basketball playoffs, I should say, we have content every single day to help bettors become better bettors. Of course, we have some free picks and information for everybody, but the emphasis is to have things to help you with your handicapping And I'm very excited to be working with that crew. It's a great crew, and we have new and exciting developments coming out every single day. So I really recommend checking out goldsheet.com.
Eric, we have lots of love coming in on the YouTube live chat for you. New faces, new content, new picks here at Wager Talks Last Call. Ask Eric any of your NFL draft questions. He's here to break it down. He's going to tell us a little bit about the bets that he's already locked in. But I want to start off by talking about the breaking news today, which is Lamar Jackson reaching that 5-year deal with the Baltimore Ravens, something that we expected to happen, either a trade or a signing prior to the draft. Now the Ravens will not be after a quarterback this year. How does this affect the draft? And do you expect the Ravens win total to move at all? It's currently at 9.5.
So from a win total perspective, it seemed like odds makers were weary of going too low on the Ravens win total, considering if they did do what they did today and re-sign Lamar Jackson, they certainly would have been taking a lot of money on the over if they would have dropped the number at, say, 6.5, 7.5. That would have put a lot of liability on the bookmakers' plate. So they opted to keep that number relatively steady throughout the entire process. And I'm a Washington Commanders fan. I was really hoping that the Commanders would make a push for Lamar Jackson. Of course, we have a plethora of QB needy teams that I'm sure were in the running, even though some of those teams said that they were not in the running for Lamar Jackson, which honestly makes absolutely no sense to me. Of course, the 2019 MVP and one of the most dynamic players in the entire sport. But it's hard to say because obviously it happened now and hindsight's always 2020. I never really felt like Lamar was ever really going to leave the Ravens. The Jalen Hurts signing really helped both sides there because it gave Lamar an understanding of, listen, you're probably not going to get a fully guaranteed contract. That was probably an anomaly with Deshaun Watson. And then also for the Ravens, they could come back and say, Lamar, look, this is what Jalen Hurts got. The guarantees clearly weren't there, but we can beat him on the overall contract value. So win-win for both sides. I don't think it necessarily affects the Ravens draft whatsoever. I think they still could use some help on the O-line, in the secondary, and on the defensive line, and of course at wide receiver. So I think Baltimore fans can rejoice. Other teams looking for a quarterback, you're going to have to look elsewhere. Lamar is going nowhere.
Baltimore holds the 22nd overall pick as it stands now. Let's talk about this NFL draft. It's a draft full of unpredictability. We've got smoke screens, we've got Reddit threads, we've got it all. And right now, Bryce Young is minus 5,000 to be the first overall pick in this draft. You have him as a lock for your first pick. When did you get on this? And do you still believe that he's going to be the first selection?
I certainly believe he's going to be the first selection. Back to like the old bookmaker adage, they would not be exposing themselves to all these other players at such high odds if they did not expect Bryce Young to be that number one overall pick. I got this wager in on April 6th. So if you have an understanding, that's 21 days ago, 3 weeks ago to the day, where I was able to bet on Bryce Young at plus 140 to be the first pick in the draft. And this is just another important talking point. So I wrote an article about this for the Goldsheet. It's been up for about a week now, and it's kind of the do's and don'ts of betting the NFL draft. You're going to see a ton of content out there about what people's opinions are on who's going to go where based on a variety of factors. But the NFL draft is an information-driven process. The only way to know what a team is going to do is not to, watch some tape and say to yourself, I'm biased. I like this guy. I went to Ohio State. I hope they draft this guy from Ohio State. Is to listen to the people who actually have their eyes and ears in NFL buildings who are giving out those reports, whether that be people in the media who actually worked in a building, beat writers whose jobs every single day are to show up to facilities and understand what is going on, and not just some people whose jobs are to create content and create mock drafts. Those people are going to give you their opinions. And while they could be right on some of those opinions, betting on the draft is about fact. So this bet was taken before the Alabama Pro Day. And this is when the line really started to shift. If I did not actually, literally the day after, it went to even odds. Yeah. And then the day after that is when this line started shifting all the way to the minus 500, minus 1,000, so on and so forth. So given the odds of it right now, the reports from coming out of Carolina's building after the pro day from Alabama, and also looking at the history of draft picks from Carolina's GM, they're not afraid to go with undersized quarterbacks like they did with Russell Wilson in the past and see success with them. And just looking at the tape, Bryce Young was the best quarterback there. So looking at the odds, minus 5,000, of course, probably not bettable at this current moment, but I'm very happy to be sitting on a plus 140 ticket and we're going to have that cash in about 2 hours' time.
And look at you, Eric. I mean, I wish we could all get on that now, and hindsight's 2020. But let's talk about a quarterback that you actually could get some value on, and that's CJ Stroud. Stroud's been all over the news this last week. I mean, really, this last couple of months. But the latest with CJ Stroud is this S2 test. So essentially, it's the new version of the Wonderlic. It's testing processing, how quick you're able to see something and adapt to it. And CJ Stroud is now the favorite to go third overall. Texans hold the second pick. Will Anderson is the favorite to be the second pick. CJ Stroud once was the betting favorite to go first overall. So his market has been dropping. You can get him in plus money still to be the third selection, but the Cardinals hold that pick. A lot can change. If you were to bet on CJ Stroud right now, where would you have him landing?
I still have him going number 2 overall to Houston. I understand that there's a lot of things the Texans can do, and this is what makes this draft one of the most toughest to predict drafts of the recent past. There are actually a couple of factors. Number one is, as we saw, the gambling allegations that came out about a week ago with some players in the NFL being caught gambling on the NFL and in college. I think, and I actually read this from a colleague of mine on Twitter, TA, he put this out there that the reason that, or not the reason, but since there is such a close to the vest kind of mentality now for these GMs, and now that there's so much access to information for everybody, players included, that this close to the vestness on picks is by design. It's because they don't want players who are in the facility maybe hearing something, and next thing you know, they're getting down, and that could be a disaster for the NFL betting bookmakers and everybody. So I think that CJ still goes number 2, even though there is a very high possibility that the Texans can just sit tight and draft Will Anderson or Tyree Wilson or even Paris Johnson at number 2, even though they probably don't need a tackle. That would be a little bit of a stretch there. But all things considered, CJ Stroud is my quarterback too. And despite some of the movement here, it still just makes sense for me to go to Houston because their other option is what? To maybe trade back. I don't think at that point anybody's trading up. Again, you could pick a player like Will Anderson who you think is going to be a premier defensive end. I personally am so on Anderson. Or they can, again, try to just hit on a quarterback in 12 at pick number 12 and kind of call the season a wash and maybe wait until next year because D'Amico Ryans, their new head coach, does have a 6-year deal. So if he does not make waves immediately, it's not like he's getting fired anytime soon. So it is, again, just so interesting. I'm still sticking with my guts in my final mock draft. I do just have the Texans sitting there and taking a guy like Stroud who has the body type, has the arm to make some of those amazing throws. But the S2 test that you mentioned is a huge red flag. The fact that he cannot process quickly is such an important tool for NFL quarterbacks. And no quarterback who has scored poorly on that test has developed to being a good quarterback. So he would actually have to be an anomaly in order to, prove that he is worth the number 2 pick and actually have a great NFL career. So a lot of moving parts, but I'm sticking with my guns. I think CJ is still going to be selected at the second pick in the draft.
I didn't love, Eric, how he was reported saying he's not a good test taker. It feels like part of playing football, every game is slightly a test, but we'll see what Houston decides to do with that second pick. Texans also hold the 12th pick as it is now. Let's talk about the 5th overall selection. Currently, the Seattle Seahawks hold that pick. That was from the trade with Russell Wilson from the Denver Broncos. Pete Carroll likes to spice things up on draft day. He's on Twitter right now, like retweeting Love is Blind trailers and giving us a little bit of clues. It's all over the place. Jalen Carter is the favorite to be the 5th selection at minus 230. There's been some Anthony Richardson chatter, though. You can get Richardson at plus 550. You have Jalen Carter going 5th overall, I would assume, to the Seattle Seahawks. Walk us through where your head's at with that 5th pick and if there's still value on it with Carter at minus 230.
So at minus 230, the value is definitely depleted, especially considering I was able to get down less than a week ago. Jalen Carter, 5th overall at plus 375 at a notable offshore book. So sitting here with my closing line value obviously does not mean the ticket is going to cash, but I'm very excited for that prospect of that cashing. Another way to look at this bet, if you don't want to silo yourself on 5th overall, which still has decent value if you shop around and find under about minus 350 odds, is for Jalen Carter's draft position to be under 6.5. I actually got that as well at plus 145. Now it's at minus 380. And I think, again, that's a great value pick because Jalen Carter is the best player in the draft, non-quarterback, besides Bryce Young. So if the Texans really want to make a splash and they don't want to draft a quarterback, I don't know why they wouldn't just pick the best player in the draft class with the number 2 pick and not really think twice about it. Same with the Cardinals, same with the Colts, anticipating again, maybe somebody leapfrogs into the 3rd spot to get a quarterback. The Colts, they really don't love anybody in the draft. They clearly need a quarterback, but no need to force one if you can get a game record like Carter. But Carter to Seattle just makes so much sense, especially considering, again, how the draft is supposed to line up. From my mock draft, I have Bryce Young going first, CJ going second. I have Arizona taking Will Anderson number 3, and I have the Colts taking Will Levis number 4. I did no trades in my mock draft because obviously that then gets very difficult to project. But at that point, if Jalen Carter is sitting there at number 5, that's a no-brainer pick for Seattle, even with Anthony Richardson still on the board. And I believe that simply because, yes, Geno Smith last season was incredible, and they signed him to that contract, which could be a one-and-done deal if they really want it to be. It's not like they invested really a lot of years into Geno Smith. But why not just take the best player there? Keep it simple. You have a guy who last year would have been better than Jordan Davis, who went number 14 overall. This guy's not like he just came out of nowhere. He's been known as the top defensive tackle prospect in who knows how long for 2 years now. Take him. He'll disrupt opposing quarterbacks, hate getting pressured from up the middle. So I think it just makes too much sense for the Seahawks to not take a quarterback, to sit tight, let the board fall, and Jalen Carter be drafted 5th. And again, if you're looking for still some value, it's going to be juice heavy, but there's more value in Jalen Carter's draft position to be under 6.5 because, of course, you have that protection if anybody trades up to get him or any of the teams in the top 5 or top 6, I should say, decide, you know what, we don't want a quarterback. Let's take this game record in the middle.
Yeah, if you're looking at best player available, Jalen Carter's the best player in this entire draft. There's an argument due to the off the field issues. We saw his stock drop a little bit, but if the Seahawks can get him at 5, I'm all with you. Seems like the right play. Minus 230. Now you could maybe check it out at the under 6.5 line. Okay, let's talk wide receivers. And I'm over at the YouTube live chat right now. So I'm going to remind everyone, draft questions, NFL questions. Eric's your guy. Head over to the YouTube live chat. Get your questions out. But Fritz Allen brings up a point that we were actually just going to talk about. He says, thanks to Eric, I have a share of JSN as first wide receiver off the board. Wish I would have laid more. Jackson Smith and Jigba, he's been looked at as the best wide receiver in this class. You can get him at minus 550, so it's heavily juiced right now. That's who you have going off the board. Now, I found an interesting take. Plus 750 to be a top 10 pick for JSN. That's a lot, and I understand it's risky. Is there any part of you that thinks, hey, it might be worth it? JSN might be a top 10 pick.
That's a stretch for me, unfortunately. If he was coming out of the draft last year, coming off that amazing Rose Bowl performance, which does have a slight caveat because it was incredible, and I'm not trying to take a lot away from it, but a lot of the Utah secondary was sitting in that game, so he was actually being covered by like backup running backs in the passing game. So always have to look at everything face value, peel back not at face value, peel back the onion and take a look at it. Top 10 is really too much of a stretch for me, considering just who's drafting, right? Like, again, Carolina quarterback, Texans, anything but a wide receiver, Cardinals, anything but a wide receiver, Colts, Seahawks, Lions, Raiders, Falcons, Bears, anything but a wide receiver. Maybe the Bears there, but if they traded for DJ Moore, and of course, they have a much more pressing needs than the Eagles. Don't need a wide receiver. He's not somebody you're going to need to trade up into the top 10 for. So unfortunately, I'll certainly be passing on that. If you take a flyer and you hit that, let me know that I'm wrong, but I don't see that happening tonight, unfortunately.
Eric has JSN as the first receiver selected in this draft. His selection number is at 12.5, maybe a little bit more value there if you want to take the under. Eric, Pauly, we appreciate you joining us here Thursday evening on Last Call, the very first time, breaking down the NFL draft. Awesome content, awesome stuff that you do over at Goldsheet. Make sure to go check him out at goldsheet.com. Eric, I appreciate you. Hope you have a great draft day. We'll catch you here next time on Last Call.
Again, everybody enjoy tonight. It's going to be a good one.
Next up, we're going to bring Tony Finn on, a regular here at Wager Talks Last Call. He's going to continue the NFL draft conversation. We're also going to break down some MLB action with Tony. So reminder, head over YouTube Live. I see some NFL draft questions coming. We're going to get to all of them. continue the draft questions, any MLB action. Tony's here. We welcome him on to last call right now. Tony Finn, welcome back. We appreciate you here. Excited to talk some draft, some baseball. But first, what do you have going on at Wager Talk this week? Where can we find you?
You can find me at Wager Talk, only at Wager
There you
Talk. Yeah, visit my homepage and you'll see whatever's available long term, be it futures or in season futures as well as updated and daily plays, big plays, vast number of different kinds of plays, be it props, game sides, or series plays. Totals, etc. So, Wager Talk, only at Wager Talk.
Awesome stuff, Tony. All right, let's continue the NFL draft conversation. I'm going to read out the 5 overall picks that you have listed, and then we're going to break it down a little position by position, team by team. You have the Panthers with the first overall pick selecting Bryce Young. Number 2, you have the Texans taking Will Anderson. 3, Cardinals stay put and draft Tyree Wilson. The Colts get Will Levis at 4, and the Seahawks draft Jalen Carter at 5. Let's start with number 2. I feel like Bryce Young seems like a lock now. I don't want to waste time speaking on him. So Texans with Will Anderson. He is now the favorite to be selected 2nd overall. How do you get to that place? And do you think that there's any part that CJ Stroud could sneak in, as Eric was mentioning prior?
Well, I will say this. I think anything can happen. This is one of those drafts that you have a couple, maybe 3 great players. And then you have a bunch of good players where this morning, Megan, I took a look at the odds. I went to just 6 different sports books that I use, and then added a couple in just randomly to see if any of the books had the same odds for the top 5 players to and not one was identical. So when you see a books that vary that much, I think there'll be a surprise or two. My second pick, with Houston is based on what I believe the new head coach wants to do, and I don't like it's been mentioned many times, and that is I think he'll have a large impact on who this team picks. And being a former Alabama guy, I think that Will Anderson is who he's going to like and pick.
Tony, I don't want to bury the lead here because Will Anderson is the favorite, but your 3rd pick in this draft is plus 1,100 right now. You have the Cardinals staying put and taking Tyree Wilson, defensive end out of Texas Tech. Why do you see that happening? What led you to that place? And we can win some major money if that does end up happening.
Well, I will say this: if this team would have listened to a guy that I have a lot of respect for, I think he's a pretty savvy kid. I'm talking about Murray, the quarterback. In the past, he's made recommendations on who he would have liked to see the team select, and it had to do with offensive line protection for him and opening up the offense and doing the things that scheme, at least the scheme they used to be under, would have played well in. I think maybe wouldn't have had a coaching change in that. But this is all about. I think Arizona has a chance of actually trading down. They're one of the few in the first 5. I know Seattle would also probably like to make some changes too and trade down. I don't think Seattle's going to be able to work that out, but I do think the Cardinals could. So this is a long shot, and I'll say this: the Cardinals will do well by building the defensive front with the addition of Wilson, 6'6" edge rusher who is NFL ready, and I think 1,100 is an awful good price tag on this kid. He's the number 2 edge rusher, or number 2 behind the quarterbacks. The edge rusher is, I think, in this draft, and outside offensive lineman. And I think Wilson is a good fit for this Cardinals team, and a kid that knows about a sophisticated offense coming from Texas Tech.
I got to maybe get a ticket on that because it's just too good a value right now. I'm heading over to the YouTube live chat, Tony. City by the Bay says he put some pizza money on Quentin Johnston to be the first wide receiver picked at plus 1,200. This is the wide receiver out of TCU, big guy, and has been compared to like a Hopkins style of player. Could this be a good value play at plus 1,200?
I think so. Again, I'll reiterate that I think there's going to be some surprises in the first round. Outside, yeah, I think there'll be surprises in the first five, and I think
Yeah.
that you've seen it just by talking to this group today, and we're pretty, we're limited. There's tons of people with differing opinions, and again, all the books, none of the books are exact. At least the 8 I looked at, none of them had at least had that order 1 through 5 that were identical with another book. So great stuff, and another great reason to get out and shop and have options to put futures and even nightly game sides and positions in. But anything goes. I think, Megan, it's going to be fun to watch.
One question I'm seeing here from Vegas Diggin, a regular here at Last Call. He says, "Who trades first in this draft, Tony?" I think it's the Eagles. They have so many first rounders.
Yes, would you argue with that? I wouldn't argue that. Listen,
I wouldn't
there
argue that. I
is
mean, yeah, the Eagles crushed the draft
yeah,
last year. I don't see why they wouldn't do it again this year.
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's again, I typically am never really excited about watching the draft. I'll pay attention to it. It'll be in the corner. The ticker will be in the corner on one of my screens. Some of the software I have, and I'll watch some of the scores and such, and maybe I'll be watching a game. But this will be a draft that I pay much more attention to. A lot of it's because if they're going to include some things that I find interesting, it happens to come out of Kansas City, Super Bowl winner, Travis Kelce, and that group are doing some crazy things in Kansas City this weekend. And I wish I was in Kansas City, had a place to stay, got invited to come to go to this draft this year, and was unable to make it. So I'll be watching, and and again, I typically don't.
So I want to talk. We got someone in the comments, Ryan. I appreciate the honesty. We want to get some value on the market right now, where we can get some tickets. Doesn't matter how it's changed, how we got to this place. I think Will Levis is an interesting one. He's been, big in the news lately with the Reddit thread saying that he was supposedly going to go first overall. If we don't buy into that, which I don't, I'm looking at this number 4 pick, minus 105. That's where you have him in. But Anthony Richardson has kind of been up in this air too. You can get him at 4th to go with the Colts at plus 195. Where can we find value when it comes to Levis and Richardson? How would you bet on them as it stands right now?
Listen. Richardson's kind of a wild card. He, if you I suppose if you place a lot of weight on the combine or his pro days or what he did to display his skills, it just depends. I think Will Levis is probably a lot safer selection. I think you're going to find a kid who's a physical runner, an accurate passer. I think he made an awful big impression on the Colts and new coach Shane Steichen. Really a big, so much so. And this is a guy who designed the Philadelphia offense around Jalen Hurts. So the betting line on Lewis to go under 4.5, I think, is a awful good selection. I have him for going to the Colts.
So Teddy B in the comments, he said, Megan, I'll get your thoughts on this too. Thoughts on the Vikings drafting a quarterback at plus 500. Hearing they're keen in on Kirk's replacement, maybe Anthony Richardson. So the Vikings pick at, I'm looking at it, make sure I don't mess this up, but the Vikings currently have the 23rd overall pick. I don't really think that Richardson should be available by then. If Richardson's there at 23, I like that bet a lot. Plus 500. The Vikings are going to need to eventually come up with a plan for after Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins has been that stable quarterback, but he's not taking them to the NFC Championship. They aren't getting that long-term success that they need. Should the Vikings draft a quarterback or should they be in the mindset of best available? Do you like that plus 500 mark for the Vikings to get a quarterback in this draft?
I do. I like that. I'll say this. In my opinion, I think they have probably 4 needs. I mean, when you said best available, I think that even really they're going to go after what they need, and I think they need help defensively. I wouldn't think too many would argue with that. And even at wide receiver, outside, they need a little bit to displace some of the bracket covers and the doubles that their top receiver gets. I like Deontay Banks, cornerback from Maryland for the Vikings. They desperately need help at the corner position. This kid can play. He's NFL ready.
And how about Hendon Hooker? Where do you see him going?
Yeah.
Quarterback out of Tennessee.
Well, I tell you what, and that I had to go look here. I can't remember exactly now, but I'll glance while I'm talking to you. I think he's probably what I have. I think it was item is the fourth quarterback one. I'm not. I think that's accurate. I have Stroud.
Yeah, that would make
number
sense.
11. Yeah, I
Yep.
think I had it number 4, and I only have the notes in front of me for a top 5 of the first round that I had. I thought maybe we discussed. So I would have to pull up.
Yeah.
The,
No, that makes I
chart.
mean, Hendon Hooker's kind of been that, like, back and forth. I'm just thinking if there was a quarterback to fall in this draft, you could get some value on him, and if you're looking at the Vikings
Yes.
in particular, if Hendon Hooker's around at 23, it might be worth taking there. All right, we are talking a lot about the NFL draft, so I'm sorry for
Yeah.
the MLB questions, but don't worry, Tony Finn will be back next time to break down more MLB. We got carried away with the NFL draft, but it's taken priority, and I'm okay with it. I'm excited. Tony Finn, we appreciate you joining us. You're the #1 baseball profit leader at Wager Talk all time. So you know what? That's the only promo you need. Just go and buy his picks right now at Wager Talk, and we don't even have to talk about it here at Last Call. Good luck tonight, everyone. Tony, appreciate you joining. Go cash some tickets.
Thanks for having me.
And that'll wrap up today's episode of Last Call Draft Day edition. Good luck, everyone. There's some great parlays out there. If you still want value in the draft, there's plenty of it. It is an unpredictable one in 2023. NBA playoffs, all the more here. Happy to be back at Last Call. We'll catch you here on Saturday at 11 a.m. Eastern. Good luck tonight. Cash some tickets.
The NBA playoffs start the second week of April, with the NHL playoffs scheduled to begin immediately after. Whether you're looking to raise the Stanley Cup or lift the Larry O'Brien Trophy, we've got the deal for you. Postseason subscriptions are already a great deal at $219, but with this early bird special, we're slashing it even more to just $177